You were drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second round of the NHL draft. Walk us through that moment. What was going on in your head at 18, and how did this shape your potential?
It's hard to say if it was necessarily the right place for me to get drafted to.
Injuries are often career-ending for some athletes, leaving North America and rebuilding overseas. What did that transition teach you about resilience, identity, and betting on yourself when no one was watching?
You know, there was times when things weren't going well. Have good years, bad years, good games, bad games. The year before I left to go to Europe, I actually probably had one of my worst years.
A lot of people have passion, but I've learned that passion will come and go and fade out, but the purpose is always there.
You know, what a lot of people don't talk about or see is the mental preparation that goes into a game. You know, there's a fair amount of stress and anxiety for a lot of people that go into the lead up to the game.
I would never take a day off. I didn't want to watch TV. I thought that anything I would do that would quote unquote make it look like I was weak or not doing something was a sense of a weak leadership.
Yeah.
But what that did is it really affected my personal life.
You still have to live your life. You're just go, go, go all the time. It's just too much mental strain on someone.
10, 11, 12 years old, they're already a professional athlete. They're training 5 to 6 days a week. They still need to be a kid. Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Club podcast. I'm your host, Sean Freitas. Today we've got Jesse Blacker. Jesse, thank you so much for being here. I know that you battled through injuries, rebuilt your life abroad, and today you live in Las Vegas with your wife and daughter, leading a life few ever see behind the stats. So thank you so much for being on, and I can't wait to dive in with this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You were drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the second round of the NHL draft. Walk us through that moment. What was going on in your head at 18, and how did this shape your potential?
It's hard to say if it was necessarily the right place for me to get drafted to, but as a kid, you know, getting drafted to your hometown team, and, you know, I grew up a Leafs fan growing up in Toronto. You know, I was ecstatic about it. I was like, this is the best. Toronto City, you know, the nightlife, you know, everyone knew who you were. It was great.
Yes.
In hindsight, was that the best place for me to get drafted to? Probably not. You know, some off-ice stuff, and, you know, just the timing of getting drafted there with, you know, their current roster that they had. And, you know, like I said, looking back, it probably wasn't the right spot for me to go, but, you know, that's life. Things happen, and, you know, obviously it didn't work out the way I had hoped it would, but no regrets about it.
And can you, hockey was always kind of confusing to me about how you actually become a professional hockey player. So can you walk someone through like what happens like during high school and the climb to being a professional?
So I played in Toronto. I played I played minor hockey in Toronto first, which is like AAA. Okay. And from there you get drafted to major junior, or some guys take a route and go to NCAA, go to school. You know, I looked at both options, and I felt, for me personally, major junior was the best route.
Okay.
So then I played for the Toronto Red Wings my draft year, and got drafted to Windsor Spitfires in the OHL. And I went and played there for 2.5 years. And from Windsor, when I was playing there, I got drafted to Toronto.
Okay.
But you can't play in the minors as an 18-year-old. You can only play in the minors as a 20-year-old. If you make the NHL, then you can play as an 18-year-old. But I didn't those 2 years, so I spent 2 more years in major junior.
Okay.
And I ended up getting traded and playing with Owen Sound, another OHL team. When I turned 20, I went and played for the Toronto Marlies, which is the AHL affiliate to the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Okay.
So then I went there, played there for, I'm trying to think, it's been a while, 3.5 years, something like that. Had some injury problems, some other issues, and, you know, I guess the best way to put it was I was a slow learner. At that age, I just hadn't matured enough yet. And I ended up, long story short, being traded. Got traded to Anaheim. Played there in their farm team for a few years. Bounced around a little bit more, and then ended up basically deciding to go overseas. Family choice, personal choices. It made more sense for me to try to basically build a nest egg and financially go that route at that point. You know, it's a tough pill to swallow. You end up kind of giving up on your dream, I guess you could say, of playing in the NHL and you know, winning a cup or whatever those dreams may be. So that was probably the toughest part of leaving North America to go play in Europe, but no regrets about it. So,
and I think, you know, like I said, hockey was always the most difficult for me to understand, like how that all works out. But it's amazing because it's almost like you live, like you're really young at that time, so almost like you live like 3 or 4 lives, you know, but before you even get a chance to quote unquote make it, you know.
Sure. I mean, I was at 16. I moved away from home and lived with a billet family in Windsor. Great people, but you know, it's an adjustment. Obviously, you're not at home anymore. You don't have, you know, mom and dad taking care of you and maybe steering you on the right path at certain times.
It's almost like too much freedom per se.
Sometimes it can be. You know, the billets do the best they can, and you know, they do a great job too. But you know, there's nothing like having your own parents obviously guide you in the right direction. Yeah, so I billeted for, you know, my whole junior career, and then when I got drafted to Toronto, I came. It was hard to go back to living with my family, and you know, my dad had downsized from a different house, and so he was in an apartment. I was just like, you know, I'm just gonna get my own place. So I ended up pretty much at 20 just living on my own from there on out.
Yeah, just like crazy change of chapters in life.
Yeah, pretty much. Just a lot of things can change really fast when you're in that lifestyle and that line of work.
So, you know, injuries are often career ending for some athletes, but you made a bold pivot, you know, leaving North America and rebuilding overseas. What did that transition teach you about resilience, identity, and betting on yourself when no one was watching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question because, you know, there was times when things weren't going well personally, or, you know, you have ups and downs in your career. You'll, you know, have good years, good games, bad games. The year before I left to go to Europe, I actually probably had one of my worst years. It was just injuries and just not playing very well. It was, you know, kind of low on self-confidence and, you know, down pretty bad. So it reflected in my game. And thankfully, that was actually the year I met my wife. And she was actually, I don't think I'd be here today if I hadn't met her.
That's amazing.
She was big support system for me, and you know, kind of helped me get back to believing in myself, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna quit hockey, I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna, you know, figure something else out to do. I thought hockey was thought that was it. I thought it was kind of over. So she kind of steered me in the right path and was like, no, like, just, you know, it's a bump in the road, you just keep going, maybe you need to change. So that was kind of how I decided to, you know, give it one more year over in Europe and see how it went, and actually had probably one of the best personal years, statistically speaking, that following year in Europe.
And so it kind of sounds like, you know, obviously as an athlete, there's a lot of skill involved, but, you know, there's probably that mental health side, or the, you know, when you think, oh man, I'm not good enough, or am I going to, you know, I always tell people, it's like, we all idolize athletes, but they're actually a person too, you know, and it's like, sometimes they don't even know what person they are because they get idolized for being, I'm the hockey player, but it's like, who are you? And man, it's like, sometimes you figure that out early on. Sometimes you figure it out during your career when you have a podium to use. I feel like if you don't figure out in your career and then you retire, like things hit really hard, whether or not you retire with a lot of money or not. Like, you know, I've been fortunate to work with over 700 athletes of all different sports and ages. And it's just something I always would ask people is like, when did you like learn how to identify yourself outside of being, you know, an athlete to everyone else?
Of course. And in saying that too, you know, sometimes, like you said, injuries happen where it's an abrupt ending and, you know, poof, it's gone. And that's that. And you have to, you know, transition and figure something out pretty quick. Other times it's, you know, career's played out the way you wanted it to. You start getting a little bit older and you've made your money and you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna switch to something else, and you can kind of plan that out. But every situation's different. Sometimes you don't get that luxury of looking ahead and saying, I've got a couple years left, or, you know, however, whatever, I want to play for 2 or 3, 4 more years, and then I want to transition into X, Y, Z. You know, not everyone gets that, and it doesn't always happen. So, it's hard to sometimes figure out what you want to do post-playing career, right?
Yeah.
You've only known one thing for so many years. You know, I've played professionally now 14 15 years going on.
Which is incredible.
15 and 16. So
that's over a full decade, man. Like that's a huge accolade to you.
Yeah, so well, thank you. But I've kind of got my sights set on the future after hockey as well, and trying to plan that out now as I'm, start getting older. I don't have any plans to finish, but I also don't want to be shocked when it does come to an end and struggling to figure out what the next step is. So
do you I know that how much your wife played a role in getting you back on track, and you have a family now. Like do you feel like that helps make that transition a little bit easier for an athlete?
Yeah, of course. You have people that you can lean on in a sense, and people that are relying on you in a way. So kind of lights a fire under your ass a little bit. You can't just completely lay back and take it easy, figure out what you want to do next, and just let it be what it's going to be.
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things for an athlete is like when you're done playing, like your whole life you're used to someone telling you what to do.
Yeah.
And you got to be here at a certain time. You're going to do this, and like basically holding you fully accountable.
Yeah, that structure.
So it's like I think like when that structure goes away, it's really important to almost have your own structure that you put in for yourself.
Of course, I totally agree with you. I personally always try to keep structure in my personal life outside of hockey as well. We have same time, we go to bed roughly the same time, we eat breakfast, we have our meals kind of when we eat, what we do. Our Saturdays are the same, our Sundays are the same, our Wednesdays are the same. We have that structure in our life built in a little bit, just
absolutely.
from a personal side, and I thrive off of that, and so does my wife. Like we enjoy that. Some people are different. Some people, very, by the way, and just go with it, and whatever happens. Whatever you do. It's, but for me, I guess because I found that structure through my career, and I've always had that, practice at 8, or breakfast at 8, practice at 10, warm up at 9:30, and then work out after, meal, go home, sleep, whatever it is.
Yep.
I find comfort in kind of having that in my personal life too, where it's just, I like to have things kind of set. And
I think that just comes down to like, you probably do a real good job of communicating with your partner. I think that's something that a lot of people struggle in their relationships or friendships. They just don't communicate.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or bad, they're just not saying what they want.
I mean, it was definitely a change for her when we first met. She was like, damn, eating the same thing before every game, and same pre-game meal, same post-game meal, same, a lot of reoccurring events. But, now that she's kind of bought into it and doing it as well, she enjoys it also.
I think, for your kids and stuff too, it'll help them be structured, you know?
Yeah, she definitely has a fairly structured lifestyle. We've already put her in sports. We want her to have that same type of, structure growing up. It's all personal beliefs, but I believe that helps, young kids grow.
I was just telling my client about that yesterday, except for just be careful you put your kids in soccer, because it's like 5 days a week. But I was like, even if they only play in elementary school or middle school, whatever the case may be, there's something that sports does for young kids, and it allows them to get held accountable and some personal development that I don't think they'll get any other time. So I'm all about it could be Aikido, Taekwondo, whatever the case may be. Just get them into something where they're listening to another individual giving them instruction. I think it's so important for their development.
Yeah, of course, I totally agree with you. I think having that structure, having that responsibility, and almost in a way to a drive to, especially if you find something that they like, a drive to excel and push themselves to be better. I think teaches them good life lessons going down the road as well.
Absolutely. So you played in the KHL for nearly a decade in a league known for being unforgiving. What's the secret to staying relevant and effective at that level, year after year, across different cultures and styles that you've had to play?
Yeah, it's adaption, I guess. I mean, the game over there is slightly different than the game over here. So, when I first got over there, it was definitely an adjustment. My first year in the league actually was wasn't very good. I had trouble adapting, and again, just wasn't a great situation in terms of team. Probably not the right decision on where to sign, but again, that happens. So it was a learning process that first year. Thankfully and luckily, I got a second chance and signed a contract in my second year, and from there on out, I've just kind of I've been able to adapt and be coachable. Just kind of do my game and be responsible for myself, and just kind of keep moving forward.
I think you said it, being coachable. My business mentor, he said, like the old me always had a big ego. I never wanted to be coachable, but like over the last 2 years, I've definitely been, way open to being coached by people that I shouldn't be getting deserved to be coached by. So I was like, it's like I value their time, and they're hard on me, but they see that level that I'm trying to get to, And like over the last 2 years, I finally started realizing that, okay, I can find my purpose. I think a lot of people have passion, but I've learned that passion will come and go and fade out, but the purpose is always there.
Yeah.
And so like this year, I'm going to start my nonprofit organization called Born Again Strong. And it was, like people going through a divorce, vets, PTSD, athletes that don't make it as far as they want to. Yeah. Like everyone, it's like a start over. So cool. How do you start over with the right type of things around you?
Yeah.
There's so many things that are bad for you, but there's not a lot of great things for you. Or being in an environment where there's multiple of those people that can actually assimilate to the things that you feel. Yeah. You go and talk to a therapist, but it's like, all they do is listen to other people all day. Yeah. Have they been in those situations? Because it might be a little bit different if they have.
It's interesting you said environment, because there's actually a book, I don't know if you've read it, Atomic Habits.
Yeah,
One of the chapters talks about your environment and how it can shape you, right? It can make things extremely difficult or push you in the right direction. And I don't know, I think environment can really make a big difference in which direction you go.
Yeah, and you can't, if you don't change your environment, you can't not change. Like when I'm going to stay here, do the same. You're not going to learn. There's nothing uncomfortable unless you actually go and change. You have to, and you have to physically change your environment. Like I've been through this now twice. I'm like, I had to physically change my environment.
And it's difficult, right? I mean,
yes.
Change is uncomfortable, but it's needed at times, right? So it's, if you can actually make that change and force yourself to do it, it can definitely be beneficial.
Absolutely.
And also in the negative way, right? Like you have to force yourself not to change or to adapt to an environment that's unhealthy or affects you negatively. You have to find a way to get out of that. So,
yeah, absolutely, for sure. When you this just plays into my question. The first time that you came to Vegas with my wife, was it like a crazy trip?
Yeah.
Okay, so this puts it. I got the good question. So you live in Las Vegas now, but what most people don't know is the city. It's just a base, but it's where you met your wife at Hawkins in a wild first visit. How did that relationship anchor you through the chaos of your career?
So funny story. I was playing in the minors at this time, and you don't make a lot in the minors. You make enough to essentially to live, and then by the end of the next summer, you're needing to play to survive again. So, Vegas wasn't really on my radar at that point back then. I'm fortunate enough. I had some friends that were able to become quite successful early on in their careers, and they were like, let's go for a guys trip to Vegas. And I was like, I don't know, it's even regardless flights and hotel, it's still going to be expensive. They're like, man, you got to come. So anyway, it was one of my this is he's the godfather of my daughter. I've been brothers with him since I was 14. So he's like, just come. So whatever. Ended up getting on a plane. We go to Vegas, and they're joking around. They've been a few times, and they're like, man, don't fall in love with any of the waitresses and servers, okay? Don't do it. First night out, met Melissa maybe 30 minutes into being there, and it was like, man, I love this girl. It was, immediately fell in love. And then just kind of hung out with her for the night, and then invited her out to the pool the next day. She showed up and kind of just hit it off, and that's when I was like, hey, like, would you want to come to Toronto and come visit me? And she was kind of a little weary of it. She asked me, she's like, have you ever, like, have you killed anyone before? Like,
yeah.
Like,
I have a feeling from both sides.
Yeah,
like,
just
the servers are like, yeah, we're not going to meet anyone in the club, and then you're like, well, I'm not going to, it's so it's a funny thing,
And that's what she's, obviously now we laugh about it because she's like, I would never, like, she's like, I don't know why, but normally she's like, I would never, you're there to party and meet girls, and it's not really something I would ever consider, with a future with or whatever. So, long story short, she ended up coming to Toronto. She missed her first 2 flights, I think. She was like super nervous, like didn't really want, like kind of shaky about it. She came out, we had a great time. And then honestly, pretty much from that first trip, I was like, I guess I have a girlfriend now. Like that was that. And then we got engaged, I think like a year to date of my trip to Vegas.
That's awesome.
And
have you ever been in a long distance relationship?
I had one relationship prior to her when I was like 16 for a few months. Other than that, that was it. I was single.
Yeah, and obviously playing all over the place.
Yeah,
like you have there's no stability foundation.
No, so I mean, and like I said, I don't think I would have been as successful as I am without the support of her. So I guess it was a blessing in disguise from that standpoint. But yeah, no, it's. I traveled out here after she came to Toronto, and I loved it out here. I was like, this place is amazing. Like, I'll move out here. Like, you don't need to come to Toronto. I'll come out here and we'll move here and we'll set up shop, and kind of that's how it started, and it's just been moving forward ever since then.
How long have you guys been together for now?
Actually, today's our 9-year wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, we've been together for 10 years, but 9 years married.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you lived in Germany, Russia. How has being a global athlete shaped your worldwide view, especially now raising a dollar in the U.S.?
It gives you an appreciation for what you have at home, I think. You get to see many cultures. Like you said, I live in Germany, Kazakhstan, Russia. I don't even know. I can't even think of all of them. All the places you visit when you play. Played international tournaments. You get a grasp of other cultures. Food, living, people. It's pretty cool. So you get to see. There's nothing like home, but obviously there's some things over there that I'm like, man, we need to adapt this back home. And then there's other things where over there you're like, oh, they should really try to figure it out the way the U.S. has it. So there's no perfect world, but like I said, it gives you an appreciation for what you do have here, and it's pretty cool to be able to see all these countries and places and experience what they have to offer. Ironically, my wife is actually fluent in Russian now. She's been taking lessons for 3 or 4 years, and
man, I struggled. I had to cheat my way through high school Spanish. And I'm half Portuguese and Hawaiian, so I would love to speak, my native language, but it's real difficult.
Oh, I see her work. I'm like, I just quit. I was like, there's no way. I'll pick up words from the dressing room and stuff. Probably some I shouldn't repeat, but I can get by. But then I saw her learning it, and I was just like, there's just no way I'm gonna grasp that. Like, I personally just don't. It would take me years and years and years and hours to get that, and it's just but it is cool to see it, to be able to see the other languages and learn, even if you only learn small bits of it. It's still cool.
Would you say that that here in the U.S. that you have like the most resources kind of available to you, both like professionally and privately?
Yes, I would say. Especially from a fitness level and from like a health level, I would say availability here is probably better than anywhere else. Obviously the cost is also probably more than anywhere else. But yeah, resources, I'd say this is obviously going to be the top, I think, in the world from what I've seen so far.
Okay.
Not to say the other stuff isn't great. It's just, and that could be a biased answer just because it's, what I've grown up with and what I'm used to and comfortable with. But yeah, I would say resource wise, I'd say US is probably the number one.
Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting. I think that that Vegas is turning into like the sports capital of the U.S.
all these
for
teams
sure.
join in here, right? So it's definitely doing something right.
I remember when the hockey team came here, and I was like, hockey in the desert.
Yeah.
What? But I think that I still think that the hockey base here in Las Vegas is stronger than all the other sports that we ever have had and probably ever will. There's just something that it did. I think maybe when it brought the city together during that time period. And I can't believe how many years have passed since hockey has
crazy.
been stayed here. It's just kind of crazy.
It also goes by pretty quick when they've been pretty successful for a new franchise. I think that's obviously helped grow it, grab interest from younger kids wanting to play, and it's great for the youth in that sense. But definitely them being successful has probably increased the success of the growth, I guess.
Yeah, let's see if the baseball team can do it.
I mean, I hope they can do a little better than they've been doing. So, it's always fun going to the games when your team's winning, right?
Absolutely. So, mental health in sports is finally getting the spotlight that it deserves. And how have you managed the emotional toll of injury, uncertainty, and high-pressure performance in your 14-year career?
A lot of ups and downs. I guess, any athlete, there's, like you were talking earlier, a lot of behind-the-scenes things that people don't necessarily see. It sounds great on and I'm not complaining about it anyway, but on a game day, you have your routine but what a lot of people don't talk about or see is the mental preparation that goes into a game, especially big games or playoff games or whatever it is. There's a fair amount of stress and anxiety for a lot of people that go into the lead up to the game. So I guess the best way to say is handling it would be routine and finding something that works for you. Some guys do visualization throughout the day or meditation, breathing work, whatever it may be. There's other guys that are freaks of nature and they can just play video games all day, go to the rink and be the best player on the ice, and it's it doesn't affect them. But there's not many guys like that. There are some, of course. But for the most part, I would say, some type of preparation mentally goes into their everyday life.
Yeah. And I know that everyone talks about the mental health thing, but if you don't mind sharing, what would you say, if you don't mind giving an example of when you were in a hard time, what did that look and feel like? And was it one day? Was it 6 months? What did that situation look like?
Yeah, for me, like I said, that last year in North America here was probably the worst. You get kind of, I don't know, almost like a feeling of failure in a sense, just because it's, you're like, oh, shit, this might be it. If I can't find a way out of the slump, or if I can't find a way to get my game back. Obviously, looking back on it, I can say now, my skill and my game never left. It was always there. It was just finding a way to put it all together and, mentally, or however you want to say it, to focus in and, just bring it back.
Right.
It's a lot easier said than done when you're in the situation.
Yes.
And it can, some guys it goes for a game or a shift, and they're able to come back to it pretty quickly, and at other times it's not that easy. It's for me it was probably a few months of shit, what am I gonna do? I'm fucked. I can't continue on like this. My game's gone to shit. I suck. haven't scored in 20 games or whatever it may be. But it's almost like a snowball effect, you know. You start thinking about, okay, well, can't play hockey. What am I going to do after hockey? Okay, I can't. If that's not going to work, then what's the next thing going to be? Okay, well, now I don't have enough money to do this. How am I going to pay for that? How am I going to do this? Now I can't do this. How am I going to do that? And it's just
fear will definitely paint a false reality for you.
And that's
quickly.
the thing, right? Like, you start trying to predict the future with irrational thoughts and, you know, unlikelihood of things happening. And it took me, like, that was one of my biggest things. It took me a long time to be able to explain to myself and mentally bring it back and be like, okay, this is ridiculous. Obviously these are just thoughts. They're, like you said, predicting the future. Like, just focus one day at a time. And, you know, and then, you know, the following year was, like I said, one of my best years. So it was, you know, just, it took that gap, and maybe it was the change. Maybe I changed my environment.
Do you know what happened during that time frame that kind of got you?
Well, I think a big thing too is my wife was, you know, like I said, she was very supportive, and, you know, almost in a sense, you know, like an ego boost, like, you know, you're good, you got this, you got that, you know, just be confident. And I had spoken to some sports psychologists in the past, and, you know, I tried to incorporate some visualization, some manifestation, and try to find a way back into like a positive mindset towards the game. Because, you know, I was at the point where I was like, I don't want to go to the rink. Like, this sucks. And it's weird because, you know, your game starts to go to shit sometimes. Then you get scratched or you don't play as much. And then your confidence goes down even more, as opposed to, you know, it's just, it's part of the business.
Want to isolate yourself from the place that would actually bring you back and make you better.
So, and like, again, that's where it can become really difficult, because it can snowball into a negative effect where, and unfortunately in, you know, the world of sports, it is a business, and, you know, they're going to play the players that give them the best chance to win for the most part. So if you're not performing and you can't find a way out of it quickly, it can go bad pretty quick. And, you know, I think that's partially what also happened in my North American career. I had a little bit of issues with that, but, you know, like I said, it is what it is. I'm good now, and, you know, it took me 10 years to find my routine that worked for me, and
I feel like people, you know,
dial it in. But
yeah, so anyone listening, it's not this ain't no overnight success. It takes
it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you almost appreciate going through that tough time to kind of get you to where you're at today almost?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, yes and no. Yes, I do appreciate it. I think, you know, it made me a better person, and, you know, as a dad, you know, in my personal life as well, it's, you know, it's a life experience that I can, you know, hopefully never have to help my daughter with. But if I do, you know, I've been in that situation, or I've been somewhere where I can kind of relate to her, or my wife even. And also no, because, you know, if I hadn't have been in that situation, you know, what would my North American career look like? Or, you know, would I have made the NHL? But, you know, like I said, I'm happy. I'm super happy. I have no regrets about how it turned out, or, you know, I'm not bitter about not making it, or whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm grateful for the career that I've had, and, you know, thankful for what I've been able to provide for my family. But, you know, obviously a little piece of you always wonders, well, what if, but like I said, no regrets about it.
Yeah, well, at least you get to do what you love for, like, you know, not just 14 years professionally, but you've probably been playing since you were a little kid.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's amazing. You know, let's talk leadership. What do you think separates the guys who just survive in sports from the ones who lead in the locker rooms, elevate teams, and kind of build a legacy, especially with how long that you've been playing for now?
Yeah, I've played with a few players in my day where there's something about them where you see them and you're like, that's the guy we want to follow, you know. Just, you know, doesn't complain, does the extra work off the ice, doesn't care, what position the guy is. If he's a young guy, older guy, treats everyone the same and with respect. And he just has that vibe about him in the room where you're like, fuck, that's a leader of the team. And you have other guys too, who you can clearly see it's a false leadership where, they talk a lot and, they may say all the right things and but when it comes, push comes to shove, they're not the guy you're following. And it's pretty easy to decipher once you actually get in that dressing room.
I bet.
But yeah, being a leader isn't necessarily for everyone in a sense. You should always, strive to, be the best you can and, do the most you can or work the hardest you can. But it's not necessarily, some people just don't have that aura about, that leadership.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because it also comes with a massive responsibility.
Yeah,
but with that being said, if you're following someone else who's a great leader, like ultimately you pick up those traits and people around you are absorbing those traits as well. So it's kind of a non-negotiable. Everyone around you is going to get better, even if you're not the quote-unquote leader.
Yeah. So this one guy I played with, his name was Patrice Cormier, and he just had something about him. He had that, when he walked into the room, you were like, okay, like, you didn't want to do anything stupid or, you wanted to, I guess, do the right thing. I don't know how to explain it, but that's just that was his vibe in the room. He just gave that presence. And it goes for coaches too. There's some coaches that have that head coach presence, and there's other coaches that just don't have it. Not to say they're not a good coach or they're not smart or they don't know what they're doing. It's just a presence that some people have and some people don't. I don't know. It's kind of difficult to explain.
I think it's like the difference between being like a leader and a dictator.
Yes.
Which I think that's kind of what you're describing.
Yeah.
It's like, for me, I hope that I'm a good leader for my team, but that's also, in my mind, I know that I'm doing the right things. I mean, these are just four walls. So what I do outside of here is far more important than what I do, inside of here. And I always try to explain that to my team is it's all the things that people can't see, that you're doing that really do make a difference. And, when I'm here and I walk in here, like I want them to feel inspired, but I still want to hold them accountable.
Of course.
Because I think you need both,
that's being a good leader, like sometimes a good leader doesn't always, you can be best friends with them, but they may give you shit sometimes and you may not like it. And
this like work is just like this small, but I hope that I'm leading people, in their life outside of here too, where it really matters, you spend 80% of your life working, but work is just this small compared to all of life that's out there. So almost like for me, I've had a lot of experience in life, some of which I really wish I didn't have, but if you can take that and then share those experiences with others in a way for them to learn, I think that's a really powerful thing. It's just that sometimes people they can't see that. So you get a little frustrated, like, hey, how come you can't see this here?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Leadership's an interesting thing because, some people feel like they may be, doing all the right things and saying all the right things, and they may feel like they're a leader too, and that's great. But to other people, they may not come across like that. I don't know. It's leadership's it's an interesting quality to have because
and then for me, like for a while until I understood really what leadership was, it's like I would never take a day off. I didn't want to watch TV. I thought that anything I would do that would quote unquote make it look like I was weak or not doing something was a sense of a weakened leadership. Yeah. But what that did is it really affected my personal life, because I at that point didn't really feel like I had a life. Like, I'm still working on it, but if I go on a vacation, I'll be laying there on the beach and all of a sudden I can't relax. Like it still happens. So I'm still kind of fighting that daily thing. And then I realize, okay, when's a good time to turn it on and off? I'm like, if the ideas come, I need to work on something, I'll do it. then I'll turn it back off again. Versus 7 days, I'm not going to do anything for 7 days. I actually can't do that. I actually find that used to make me feel ill.
Yeah, I know.
Mentally.
For
so
sure.
now I'm like, okay, like maybe I wake up. Let's say you go to Cancun, perfect. You go work 1 hour in the morning, that's good. I can work 1 hour at night, that's good. And then the whole day is there. But it was my choice to do that setup there, and that really started to relieve my mental toll a little bit. Because when you just feel like everyone's constantly judging you, it just you feel like you're the gladiator in the Coliseum, 24/7.
Yeah, they say I don't know if it's necessarily like a saying, something we joke about. We say, rest is a weapon. And sometimes you need that personal day for yourself to reset.
I'm getting older now. I can tell you that all of the nights I was sleeping for 3 to 4 hours have certainly come to catch up with me in health. That's why I'm now stingy about my health.
Yeah,
I'm still going to work hard for sure, harder than most people. But now I'm like, okay, I do X, Y, and Z. I have a set routine that I'm not gonna break from.
That's the thing. If you can put the work in for those hours that are allotted for work, and you work as hard as you can, you shouldn't need the extra work. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
if that's your time to recover and rest. And it's the same thing in sports. If you're only at the rink or at the stadium or the gym or whatever it may be, if you're only there for 3 hours, those 3 hours it's work time. Like,
absolutely.
And if doing it for 4, is that going to make that much difference? I don't know, but while you're there, you do the max you can, and that should be sufficient. Whether it is 3, 4, whatever you feel you need, but at some point you also do need to take that time to recover and rest. Like, it's just as important as the work, mentally and physically. Yeah,
I feel like if not, you'll enter into that burnout.
Yeah. And that's what happens to some kids sometimes, right? Even professional athletes, it happens.
Yeah,
too.
I see how hard these young kids are getting pushed by their parents.
Yeah,
like, it's become so competitive. Where like kids are 10, 11, 12 years old. They're already a professional athlete. They're training 5 to 6 days a week. And they're just not. They still need to be a kid.
Yeah,
you only get a chance to be a kid once.
Exactly.
I truly understand what that means now.
And as a parent, of course, yes, they are children. So you do need to. There's a difference between pushing and forcing, right? As a young athlete too, my dad pushed, which was, I needed it. There was days I was like, oh, I'm lazy. I don't want to do it. It's like, well, you would never force me to go, but he'd give that push, like, you really should, there's other kids that are training, you're not, and whatever, et cetera, but some kids need that push, but he would never, you're going, I don't care, doesn't matter if you don't want to, and then you'd also have to read, if there's days when obviously there are going to be days, like my daughter's 6, she plays a lot of tennis, and there's days where she's like, I don't really want to play today. I will never at this age say she has to, because that's how she loses the love of it. It's no longer fun. When it's not fun anymore and it becomes work, that's where they just fold.
I actually think I wrote a paper on that when I was in getting my degree. Is on the ability for those ages of kids to actually have choices of playing a couple of different sports, so they can figure out. They have a selection of what they actually want to do, then force them inside of one thing for so long, extended period of time.
Yeah, I don't think until you're into your teens or early teens at least, do you really need to dial it into one sport. I mean, if a child wants to and they're like, that's what I want to do. I want to play golf. I want to play tennis. I want to play hockey. I want to play baseball. Whatever it is, and they already know, like, they're committed to doing that one sport, then that's one thing. If you have a kid who's just enjoying it and they're good at it even, but it's not necessarily like a passion of theirs yet, let them explore it, and eventually they'll come back to it, or they won't. If you force them to do it, it's not going to pan out anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so when you look back at the younger Jesse, hungry, untested, drafted by the Leafs, what's one piece of hard-earned wisdom you wish you could hand him from where you stand today?
That's a tough one. I guess, focusing on yourself would probably be pretty good one. There's a lot of distractions when you're younger too, partying, girls, friends. You know, the first contract you sign, you finally, you know, whether it's a lot of money or you finally have a little bit of money,
yeah,
and it's like,
yes.
it's like, oh shit, you know what? I can go buy my own stuff now, and it's, I guess, just kind of focusing on what's important, really, you know, and not letting those distractions pull from what the goal is. I guess that's probably the main goal or main piece of wisdom I could give my younger self. That would, for me especially, that's
it's almost something that I wish that they think they have to teach you about that more before that actual moment happens, because man, I have seen some wild things that, you know, people I care about doing. I'm like, come on, what do you, especially when going about changing the environment, like you take a guy who gets all this money, he doesn't change his environment, so he's with, you know, he's with people that, you know, that still do crime and stuff, or his family's taking all of his money, and I'm like, man, it's just like, I think that everyone needs like a business and a money mentor the second that pen hits that piece of paper, someone that you really trust, because there's times where that person takes your money too, you know. I mean, those are things that no one talks about.
Of course, and that's the problem with, I don't want to say so young, because, you know, a professional athlete's career in any sport isn't very long. So, you know, obviously the earlier you can get into it, the better. But in the flip side of that, I don't care what you say. When you're 18, you are nowhere near fully matured as an adult. Like, you're just not. And
man, if 50K hits your bank account, you'd be like, man, I feel like the man. Like, it's a weird thing. It's just, you know, you don't know what you don't experience yet. So,
and you know, for some people, it's harder to adjust in a way than others. It's a weird thing. You know, I don't think I fully matured, at least from a sports standpoint, until I was probably like 26, 27. Like, that's when I really kind of figured it out and was like, oh shit, this is kind of what it takes. And okay, you know, I got to block out this, block out that to focus on, you know, can't think about X, Y, Z if I want to achieve A. And, you know, for me, you know, that was the one thing. I was slow. I was slow at figuring that out. And that's kind of what led to, I think, not making it to the NHL as a full-time player, was probably that, more so than anything.
And I'm sure that happens to way more people. Than I mean, I'm sure looking back at it now, you can see it probably happened to a bunch of people around you as well. And it's just like, you know, I think having proper mentorship, you know, before you get to that point and during that time, I feel like is very important for all professional sports. It doesn't matter who you are.
It is,
you know,
and even with the mentorship, sometimes like it's hard. It's hard to figure it out sometimes.
Because you're gonna do what you want to do at the end of the day. Because, you know, you just don't know any better. Like, life is about learning from the experiences. So,
and people can tell you all they want until you actually do it and make those mistakes. It's kind of like, oh shit, they were right, or man, I shouldn't have done that, or, you know, it's kind of live and learn a little bit. But yeah, across any professional sports, it's the skill level between players is very, very marginal. Yes, you're going to have your guys that are just better than everybody. They're just more skilled, they're faster, they're stronger, they're better balanced, whatever it is. They're just the best players in the world. But that's not everyone, right? The skill level and the talent level between everyone else is actually very marginal. It's the guys who can put it all together or buy in, block out distractions, whatever it may be, are the guys that end up making it full time.
That makes sense. Yeah,
that's my opinion, at least,
so
right?
If there's one piece of advice you can give to a younger athlete that's about to make that transition, what would it be?
I guess in a single word would be kind of focus. It's kind of tough advice, but it has to be, you still have to live your life, right? You can't, like we were talking about burning out and stuff. If you're just go all the time, it's just too much mental strain on someone. You can't you can't focus like that 24/7. It just, you'll burn out. It's not possible. You have to enjoy life. You have to do things that you enjoy doing, or whatever makes you happy. You still have to do it to an extent, granted, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. Like, you block those distractions out, and that's when you become better. You become a better player. You become a better person. You figure out what you need to be the best player you can.
No, that's awesome, man. And thank you so much for being on here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I think that people can really assimilate to these conversations like this. So,
yeah.
But let's go get this workout.
Yeah, let's do it.